relationship, a debt-debtor relationship in the Gospel of John that John says we need to understand. See, there's a debt-debtor relationship between you and every single person you meet. You might not realize that. There's a debt-debtor relationship between you and God, John says. Verse 11, dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. Meaning, since God loved us, we owe it to others to love them. That's what he's saying. Well, but they don't love me. Well, it doesn't matter. God loved you so much that you ought to love them. Since God loved others, we owe it to God to love others. God loves you. And because God loves you, I should love you. Brother Harold. And I do. I loved you before I met you. I walked into Heart of Worship International Church, and here's this smiling Filipino guy who comes up to me, shakes my hand. He didn't tell me he wanted me to be his pastor then, but he did have it in his head. Because later on we had a long talk about that. But I met this guy, and I knew that God loved him. Now, it's easy for me to love him. Some people are harder to love, right? Right? Who's got a hard-to-love person in their life? Come on! Get them up! You guys don't want to take them up. God loves them. And because God loves them, we should love them. Every time you and I act unlovable, and I'm tempted to respond and not love you because you're acting unlovable. No, that's so messed up. I need to remember I'm not loving you because I ought to love you. I'm loving you because God chose to love me. We shouldn't have to love the person beside us because we're supposed to. We should love the person beside us because God loves them and God loves us. And it's Christ, saying to us, love one another as God has loved you. I'm pushing this because I believe it so much. I owe it to God. I owe it to God to love you. I want you to love people, John is saying, and I'm saying this morning on John's behalf, I want you to love people in such a way that no one will ever say, no Anne Rice will ever say again that followers of Jesus are quarrelsome, hostile, disputatious, and a deservedly infamous group. I want that idea to be erased from the face of humanity, John is saying. And the only way for that to happen is for you to take seriously this new commandment, to love one another. See, I'm just guessing at this point because I don't know Anne Rice personally. I guess I could have emailed her to see if she would have shown up this morning, but probably not. I don't think that this love one another discipleship is what Anne Rice quit. I don't think she would have quit that. I don't think she would have quit being a Christian or a disciple if we had gotten not 10 commandments right, not 9 commandments right, not even 8, but if we had just gotten this commandment to love one another right. And there's a sense in that regard in which we all need to quit Christianity, because we don't even know what it is anyways, because it's not defined in the Bible, it's whatever you want it to be, where we need to quit being Christians and start being disciples. See, people quit Christianity. I don't bet, I don't wager, but I would suggest to you that everybody here knows someone who has quit being a Christian, turned their back on their faith. But I don't think people quit this kind of love. I don't think people quit, wow, they sure love me well. They just accept me unconditionally. They just forgave me. She just pardoned me. Wow, he doesn't hold it against me. Wow, he heard about my past and it's like it's a non-issue. I don't think people quit that kind of love. We hinted at this last week, but imagine what kind of a difference we would make in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, in Canada, in the world, if that kind of love was happening. Now, I'll tell you what happens, or what will happen, because we're going to be talking about this for the next 2 weeks. Don't miss the next 2 weeks, okay? People would get around us. This is what would happen if we loved like that. People would get around us, and they would say, I don't feel coerced. I don't feel forced to go to that church. I feel drawn. I feel led to the edge of who they are. I don't feel like somebody's going to reach up and grab me in, and I also don't feel judged and like somebody's going to push me out once they find out what I've done. I feel drawn. And the other thing that's strange is when I'm around these Jesus followers, these disciples, sometimes I feel a little bad. I mean, I'm telling you, my secretary, who's a Jesus follower, she messed up. And before I could find her to tell her she messed up, she walked into, my office and tells me she messed up. I just need to let you know that. Or the guy that works 2 floors down made a mistake that I never would have discovered. And he comes up to my office and he says, I want to let you know I made a mistake. And I go, what's up with you? Nobody does that. Not only does nobody do that, I wouldn't do that. Oh, I talked to these 2 people about their relationship, and man, the way they're doing their relationship, it's better than the way me and my wife do my relationship. By the way, I'm playing a role right now. I'm not talking about me. Okay? My wife and I, we're good. Somebody's going to come and ask me, are you and Lori okay? Yes. Last week, I put on my Facebook page that some sadness crept in, and people are asking me, are you okay? Are you leaving Winnipeg? What's going on? And I was just like, no, I'm sick. It's all right. These disciples, they're so strange. It's like their standards. I mean, their husbands and wives. These people are fighting for their marriages instead of against each other. That's strange. I don't do that in my marriage. It makes me feel weird. And I watched this 10th grade boy, this follower of Jesus, the way he treats my daughter. I didn't treat girls like that. When I was in 10th grade, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, what planet are you from? Will you please grow up and marry my daughter? And I appreciate the respect he shows for my daughter, but I feel a little awkward because I didn't show that respect for girls in high school. But I don't feel condemned by him. I feel strangely drawn to him and the church that he goes to with his parents. We meet someone like that. People meet someone hopefully like us. They're in a community like that and they feel drawn in. And it's not rocket science. Please don't feel that I'm making this brilliant point. This is something super new and great. It's been around for 2,000 years. Just read 1 John. Our problem is we settle for being Christian and not disciples. We settled for a brand called Christianity, and we gave up something good. What does discipleship look like in the workplace? What does that kind of honesty cost you? What does it look like in a marriage? If some of you are here today, your marriage is hurting. You seem to argue more than you talk. What would it look like to decide, you know what, I'm going to love my wife like Christ loved the church? You know what, I'm going to love and honor my husband like Christ loved. Do you know what a difference that would make in your marriage? Do you know, friends, if we get this commandment right, it doesn't really matter what else we do. It really doesn't. So let's just decide. Let's just decide. We're going to love each other because God loved us. Now, I'm going to love you because God loved me. Let's just try it. Let's just do it. Let's just meditate on that. Let's focus on that. It'll get weird. It'll get awkward. Sometimes you won't know what to do, and you're going to struggle with this. It's hard because you're human. But I think, you know what? If we're supposed to be struggling with anything as Christians, it's this. Struggle with loving one another. And John, with the perspective that we'll never have, would say to us today,